Sai Ram. My humble pranams at Swami's lotus feet. I've been in Swami's fold since 1971. Started my married life in Vadodara, Gujarat, and in 1970. 1971, a friend invited me to go to Sai Bhajans. And I went to Sai Bhajans, and something inside me clicked that this is what I'm looking for. Didn't know what it was at that time, but somebody gave me a black and white picture of Swami. I prayed to him every day. And, when you're young, you ask for a lot of things. But so then in 1975, we immigrated to Canada, decided to settle in Red Deer because my sister and brother were there. My husband and I were both able to get jobs easily. Me being a nurse, I had no difficulty. Things were going pretty well for us. And 1995-96, the recession came. My husband's furniture factory was closing down. The healthcare system was having a lot of budget cuts, which meant that a lot of nurses were being laid off. And my labor and delivery unit was closed down, and it was amalgamated with a maternity floor. And because of the layoffs, a lot of nurses who had seniority from other units were bumping in. So, for example, medical surgical units were bumping in on labor and delivery and maternity floor. It was not their specialty. So that caused a lot of commotion, and they didn't want to be there. So the morale was really low, and we were having financial difficulties, my husband and I. So one day I said to my husband, I could go to Saudi Arabia, work there for 1 to 2 years, and we'll get out of the hole. So it took us another 3 months. And Christmas time, 1995, my 2 sons and we all sat down and made a decision, filled out the forms, sent them, faxed them to a company, recruitment company in Toronto on 27th of December, that was. And on 2nd of January, I had a phone call from the recruitment company to say I had the job. I didn't want to leave right away because my older son was graduating from police academy, which was March the 18th, 1996. And so on 7th of May, my flight to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia happened. After I reached there, I just kind of thought, oh my God, what have I done? Because the laws are so strict there. Women have no rights. And the next day they took my passport away. My accommodation was beautiful. Everything was nice, but you could not talk the language. You could not communicate with the patients. You could not communicate with some of the nurses because they were from different countries and spoke their language. So you were lonely all the time. And so I reached there on a Wednesday, and I was very sad. And on Friday afternoon, I was lying down, and suddenly Swami's eyes, so deep and kind and compassionate, just came. And peace came over me. I got up, I emptied the suitcases, hanged some pictures up, called my husband and said, I'll be okay. I saw Baba's eyes. And then the loneliness is hard to describe. So I wrote a lot of letters to my friends. And my husband had decided to go to India while I was in Saudi to look after his mother in Vadodara. So that November 96, I went to India, and my husband came to pick me up at the airport Mumbai airport, and he looked so sick and had lost a lot of weight. Uh, and we stayed in Mumbai for a few days because there was a wedding in the family. And then we had a 6-day trip booked to go to Puttaparthi. And his mother didn't want to be alone in Baroda and was, so my husband was worried about her. And so I said to my husband, I have waited 22 years to do this trip. So it is my journey, my inner journey. And so if you don't come, that's okay. So he canceled his trip. I went to Puttaparthi. There was the most glorious 6 days I had with my three roommates. And we had many Baba's darshans, Baba walking, Baba gliding, Baba giving us darshans. And they were the most beautiful 6 days that I had in that trip. Then I came back and I took a train to Vadodara. And when my husband opened the door, I couldn't believe he looked even sicker. So we decided that he has to get out of India and he could go to London, England, and be with his sisters while I finished my contract. And we hated being away from each other. And my mother-in-law agreed to go to Dar es Salaam in Tanzania because she had another son there and family. So I left on 16th of December for Riyadh, and my husband went to London on 30th of December. But when I went back, whenever I closed my eyes, Swami used to have tears in his eyes. And I would say, Swami, why do you have tears in your eyes? See, he knew exactly what was going to happen to me. So then on 30th December, my husband went to England. And then on 8th of January, I had just come off a night shift. And I came home to my room, had a shower, lit a candle to Baba and prayed. And I said, Swami, please take Suresh's pain away. My husband had Crohn's disease. So 22 years I had prayed that Baba, please take away Suresh's pain. And, God says, I will listen to your prayers, but it might not always be the way you want them to be listened to. So he took his pain away because a few minutes later, I had a phone call from London from my nephew to say that, sorry, but uncle had passed away. And my nightmare started. You don't have a passport there. Girls were very nice. As soon as I made a phone call, my passport papers, I got my passport by 4:00 in the afternoon. And then I went to London. Next day, I was in London. And I was just in a fog. I could not function. But through it all, Swami's eyes never left me. It was like every time I closed my eyes, he was there, telling me I'm going to be okay, that I was protected. And then we had funeral in London. And I can't even describe that the first little while I could not function. It was a nightmare. Then I came back to Red Deer, and I had a photograph of Swami in a yellow robe on my bedroom wall, which said, why fear when I am here? Give me all your sorrows and burdens and go and live in Ananda and bliss. I used to read it and reread it because I didn't know what to do with myself. Did a lot of screaming at Swami that why did he do this to me? I remember talking to Saroj one day and saying, I feel so guilty that I am screaming at Swami because Swami has given us the tools how to deal with our grief. And but Swami's eyes never left me, and he has just carried me throughout this process. Uh, After 2 years, I started feeling better. I went to Mexico and I met a family there that were Sai devotees. Can you believe I met a family in Mexico that were Sai devotees? And they did a lot of pujas, and he talked about the soul and the spirit. And when I came back, that pain was lifted out of, the heaviness was lifted out of my chest. And then Swami sent a lot of people in my life that were helpful. Every time I was down, somebody was sent in my path to help me out, and he's carried me through. And when I look back, I feel that Swami knew exactly what was going to happen, because when I think back, I think, why did I go to Saudi? Why didn't we decide to move to Edmonton or Calgary? Because there are a lot of hospitals. I would have found a job. My husband would have found a job. Why did I go to Riyadh? But when I went to Riyadh, I had to learn to sleep in a single bed. I had nobody to talk to. And it was like I had to make myself my best friend and Swami my best friend. And so he just has carried me through. And even now, when I have worries, or I close my eyes and I see Swami's eyes, and I write a lot of letters to him, and I find a lot of my prayers are answered. And so thank you for listening and letting me share my experience. Om Shri Sai Ram.